What is up, your friends? It's been a long time since I've been here on YouTube, but in today's video, we're going to talk about how I went from being a graphic designer to a senior product designer. Keep in mind that everyone has a different experience and different journey. And that's okay. You're not going to have the same as mine or the same as others. You're going to have your own journey and your own experience in becoming a UX designer or becoming a product designer. Everything started back in 1984 when I was a little baby and, I was born. Not just kidding. Here's the real story. My story started back in 2004. That's when I decided to go to college and, pursue design as a career, right? So I went to this college called Technical Career Institute, TCI College, and it was, the program was amazing. It was called Digital Media Arts, which translate to, graphic design and all that fun stuff. But in this college, they gave us the program was insane. It was great because we cover everything: graphic design, branding, print design, editorial, a little bit of website and stuff like that. And it was a short program. It was a 2-year program. And it went amazing. I really loved it. So being in college, I got a job offer as a work study. So I was a tutor. So they gave me a lab where I used to open the lab, and then people will come in, designers, and they usually needed help with their projects and stuff like that. So I've been teaching since then. So while I was working as a work study program, as a graphic designer in a lab, then I got another job offer on the same college as a junior web designer. So I was helping out, all the college graphics and banners and stuff like that. And it was, I was learning a lot because I was working with a web developer, and he was teaching me little tricks and things, but I wasn't sure what I was gonna do. Because you can become, a graphic designer or just a print designer or a web designer, but I didn't know what I wanted, and I just worked with the flow. I was learning. I was still in college, and then I got this job offer, right? So I stopped doing the tutoring and focus on my studies and also working as a junior web designer. So I love that. After a few months working as a junior web designer in college, I got a job offer from a dancing modeling company where I was going to be a photo retoucher. So I was going to be working in Photoshop, doing a lot of retouch and editing photos and stuff like that. It was a fun experience because also I was doing $6 an hour in college, and then from $6 an hour I jumped from $6 to $20 an hour, which was insane back in 2005. So I love that. I was recommended by one of my teachers. He actually recommended me to this job. It was just a part-time job, of course, because I was in college still. But it was fun. I was learning a lot about Photoshop and stuff like that. Even though I was really good at it, I think, because I was one of those students that wanted to learn everything about Photoshop. So I was doing everything, and I was learning new things, techniques and stuff like that, inventing new things. So it was fun. It was fun. Then after I graduated from college, actually the college, they offered me a web design job, a real web design job with, I think it was $17 an hour. And it was pay benefits and everything in there, right? So I took it because it was just I was working with the same people, with the same team. So it was just great. I was just learning new things and, but I didn't know what I wanted. I was just a web designer working there, and I was happy and it was great, but that wasn't it. So after a year or two, something like that, I don't quite remember right now, I decided to go and experience what was like to work on an agency, right? To work in New York City, which at that time was the mecca of design and all of that stuff, 42nd Street, all those billboards and window displays and stuff. So I wanted to experience that. So I moved from web to kind of more print, editorial, and all of that fun stuff. So it was awesome. I jumped from different agencies working as a print designer. At one time I was a Flash designer. For those who don't know, Flash was an animation, Macromedia Flash was an animation tool that we used to use back in the days, and it was just amazing. And I remember doing like probably like 120 ads for MTV and stuff like that. It was through an agency. It was just fun to practice and also fun to experience that, working on as an animator using ActionScript 1.0, whatever. I quite don't recall it. So I was just experiencing everything in New York City, trying to find what I wanted to do in life, right? So back in 2007, 8, I don't quite recall. I was talking to a person and we were talking about like, print is gonna go away and you have to focus on digital, on web, on mobile, that it will come or whatever. So I decided to make the move and decided to, become a full web designer and then experience like what is it to be a web designer. And then to my surprise, of course, I was having a lot of trouble like communicating my ideas to engineers and developers because I wasn't a developer. So, I was trying to make flashy stuff. So they couldn't do it because at that time, the CSS property, CSS3 wasn't out, HTML5 wasn't out. So sometimes it was impossible for them to make, the designs that I created into actual, coding, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So it was just a pain always. I was arguing with developers and I didn't know why. Why was that difficult? And I didn't understand that the design was one thing and then developing that design was another thing. That's when something clicked in me and I was like, I'm not empathetic because I was just like very naive of, like working with developers, working with engineers. So what I decided to do is just like teach myself how to code, right? In college, they give you kind of like the basics of, HTML, CSS, but I never put it into practice. So I decided to teach myself how to code. And then I started coding like, right away. I started teaching myself how to do that, how to do this, and working with, back in the days, I remember it was tables and then they introduced divs. And then I had to now like understand divs and how they, work and the structure of everything. So once I learned how to code, it was just flawless. Like my mentality changed, like because I was, I was speaking their language. I was actually understanding the frustration they have with my designs. So as soon as that click, like everything changes in me, because I was thinking more about the structure of how things will be laid out on a website, on a landing page, and then the designer will kick in, right? Like, and then I can design. Like instead of me thinking about, designing and then we will figure it out later, I was more like thinking about the back end, like how an engineer like me or anyone else will, tackle this situation. And then from there, then I started like, designing based on that. So I was like two persons in one. So I was thinking like an engineer, but then I had to switch to a designer. And that's when everything changed for me. As soon as I became, I knew how to code, I knew how to design, then the other part was just the UX. And I didn't have that because I didn't care. That term back in the days wasn't used properly or people didn't care about it that much. So, but then I started like learning about it because I wanted to know more. And I was like, oh, but what if we do this and we do that? Think about the user, think about the product, think about what you're creating, how it's gonna affect the users and how we're gonna make it better. So how can we make it usable? How can we make it work? So I started practicing a lot and integrating like some of this UX stuff into my design process. And because of that, so people started noticing what was I doing right, that everything was working. So I had like 3 people in me. I was an engineer, front-end developer. I was a designer by nature. And then I was implementing a little bit of UX in the process. So a side note, I remember like working on a specific company and I was working on a project and I just pitched the idea of like, hey, what if we do a little bit of research and also include some of the time and budget to, UX. And he was hesitant. My boss was hesitant at first, but then he trusted me. He was like, okay, go ahead and do it. And I did it, and to our surprise, to us, to the client, we find out so many stuff, and then we made a great product. And that kind of like opened up the doors for me. So I was a developer, like a front-end developer, a designer, but also I was, like touching UX at some point. That's kind of like how I started my UX journey. Like after that, I included UX into my process. And if you like it, that's great. If you don't like it, that's great too, because I'm gonna do it anyways. So I pushed myself into this situation. I pushed myself to do a little research, even though like sometimes some projects didn't have like the budget to do it. I find out the time, and instead of me like spending 20 hours a week working on, front end or design, I used to take like 4 hours of that time and put it into research and do that, even though like I wasn't allowed to do it, but I did it anyways, because I was just like learning a lot about UX and implementing that into my process. And that's how I kind of like became a UX person. And I was doing a lot of that stuff. I was, understanding how the users, will use the product, and how will this impact the product, and how will this impact the business, and also, learning a lot about it. So that's how it started, like my UX journey. I introduced myself into it because another person talked to me about it, and I started reading about it, and I started like implementing that into my process. And that's how I did it. That's how I started my UX design career. I forced myself into learning coding, even though like this is a big discussion. Like you don't have to know coding in order to do UX, but that was my journey. That's how I got into it, because I learned how to code, and because I learned how to code, I knew how to make better design decisions. And because of that, that led me to UX. And then because I knew design front end and now UX, it just became like a thing, and it was just part of me. So I jumped from being a graphic designer to a flash designer to a web designer to a senior web designer to a senior interactive designer to UX designer, senior UX manager, senior product designer. So this is where I'm at today. And I wouldn't change anything at all. I mean, this is my journey, and this is what I'm telling you. Like, you have to keep learning every single day. This career is not gonna wait for you. You have to keep up with technology. We've seen it now, the UX industry is booming, it's growing like crazy. Now with the metaverse and all that stuff, more companies are aware of what UX is. So this is a great time to become a UX designer. But your journey will not be the same as my journey, as somebody else's journey. You're gonna create your own journey. In my case, I was a graphic designer who decided to be a web designer, who decided to become an interaction designer and a UX designer, and then a product designer. I made my own choices and I decided my path. So you should do the same. What do you want to do? You want to become a product designer? You want to become a UX designer, a UI UX designer, a visual designer? It's up to you. I mean, it's whatever you want. But at the end of the day, what matters is what you want in life. So I knew what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to work on products, digital products, that will help and impact so many people's lives, whether it's an app, whether it's a software, a website, whatever. I just wanted to be in that environment, in that industry. And I did it, and I'm gonna continue doing it. Of course, I do a lot of teaching, mentoring, coaching, and stuff like that, which I also love. One final thought, make sure you guys really want this. If you really want to become a UX designer, just like go ahead and read books, practice a lot, like practice, build your portfolio, network with other designers, make sure like you are up to date with technology, what's happening out there, what's the latest tool or whatever you need to do in order to be up to date with what's going on with this industry. That's all. That's my journey on how I became a senior product designer, going from a graphic designer to multiple roles in my life, in my career as a designer, and then becoming a senior product designer. So I hope this helps one of you guys out there. Don't be discouraged. My journey was amazing, and I don't regret it. I make so many mistakes, guys. Like, it's insane how many mistakes I made, but then those mistakes actually helped me become the product designer that I am today. So if I could do it with the limited resources we had back then, You can do it now with all the resources that we have nowadays. So you can do this. All right, guys. So I'll see you next time. Damn. Damn. Damn.